welcome back to another edition of 10 Count. We're here at Hollywood Smoke in the city of Santa Monica. I'm Steve Kim, joined by RingTV's Doug Fischer and the one and only institution, Ken Miller. Gentlemen, let's talk about the premiere of the PBC from the MGM Grand. Now, the fights took place. Robert Guerrero was game, but he was outgunned by Keith Thurman, and Adrien Broner, he was a problem for John Molina. But I think everyone wants to talk about the telecast and the presentation of this on NBC. Ken, your overall thoughts early on?
I assigned a reporter to go there, and his article that he turned into me yesterday, I thought the guy was turning into Tim Smith. I don't know what happened to him. I really don't know what happened to Fred Hawthorne. Fred, if you're watching this show, I sent you to go do an unbiased report on an event,
and you got a
and
press
he was
release?
just glowing about Al Haymon. He's never seen anything like it. This African American is saving the world. All of this other stuff. Frederick, if you want to keep rolling with me, man, you're going to have to get a little bit more critical.
Well, just for the record, this is Ken Miller, the editor of the LA Sentinel, one of the largest and most prestigious African American papers. Doug, I like the bells and whistles that they're trying to do. Yeah. But I've argued they've been doing that for 15, 20 years in Europe.
Yeah.
The Golovkin fights have a lot of energy.
Right.
Manny Pacquiao fights Top Rank, dresses them up with their own lighting. Now, me and you did not go. What were your impressions couchside?
Well, I didn't. First of all, I liked the event. I liked the matchups on paper. I didn't, and I think I stated this in the last 10 count. I didn't think the event merited booking a hotel room and booking a flight or driving 4 hours from Los Angeles to Las Vegas to be at the MGM Grand live. Although I guess you had to be there. Your reporter was enamored with the bells and the whistles, and it did seem like they brought, for American standards, they brought pay-per-view level production value, in-arena production value to sort of a regular Showtime or HBO level doubleheader. But I really thought the interest among most American boxing fans, particularly longtime and hardcore boxing fans, was how they would present this on NBC during prime time. This was the first primetime championship level boxing event on NBC in 30 years. So that was the curiosity going in, and I liked the production value. I thought, as far as the broadcast booth, it was a huge team, and I thought it was sort of a case of too many cooks spoiling the stew. It was just too many guys.
What about
too
the
many
fights, guys?
Too many
Let's talk about what
the fights
we
were boring.
were supposed to see in the ring. Again, with my guy Fred, he says, oh, man, it was a great fight. Keith Thurman, it was a great fight. He knocked him down.
Did he say fight of the year?
No. He
That's Kenny Rice. Leave that to Kenny Rice. He's actually on Heyman's payroll.
Yeah.
He didn't say that. And then he said, oh, yeah, Adrien Broner looked good, too. He just boxed and danced. And I said, how was the crowd? And he's been to some big fights with me.
Right.
And he said this was it was a sizable crowd. I said, were there any freebies or anything like that? He says, no, I don't know how these people got in here. He said, but this was a sizable crowd. It was a real live MGM crowd.
The bottom line is they did paper the arena. The PBC Twitter account was literally giving away 5 tickets at a time to anyone that asked. I heard MGM Grand employees got up to 4 tickets for free and discounted. Speaking of Broner, putting aside the performance, I think he's taking too much heat because John Molina quit being John Molina. And he by nature is a counterpuncher. So if a guy's not initiating, this is what you're going to get. But I found the scrubbing clean of Adrien, always boring Broner now a little bit disconcerting, almost a big brother feel. I was told that they told him, you better clean up your act. Now, my question is this. Aren't you taking the fun away of some of the personalities of boxing?
Well, that's what Broner was. It was a polarizing personality. That was a big part of his appeal. Yeah, he's a talented boxer in the ring, but there was the showmanship out of the ring, and part of that showmanship was entering the ring with a huge entourage of terrible rappers, he himself doing some terrible rap, and you either loved it or you hated it. or you were like me and thought it was just silly and funny. And even
but you always tuned into it.
You watch, right? And so we didn't get that. You don't. These guys walk in. They don't get to have their own music. They got to walk into the Hans Zimmer, you know, that sort of symphony. Yeah, kind of this classical grand overture instead of their choice. And I think, you know, whether or not a fighter has a huge entourage or not, what kind of music he chooses to walk into, and what he says in his post-fight comments, that's all part of his personality. Yeah. And this was stripped from the broadcast, and I think that's what it had. Bells and whistles. I thought it had pizzazz, but it lacked character and personality.
Ken, I thought all the bells and whistles made the overall production antiseptic, sanitized, and homogenized. There was no personality. I've never said to myself that, God, you know, I wish there was no ring announcer, no ring card girl, and no energy. Could you imagine telling Mike Tyson, hey, you can't come in the Public Enemy. You can't do Welcome to the Terror Dome. You have to do this symphony.
Well, the greatest misnomer when it comes to the sport of boxing, and we've been hearing this, I mean, I've been involved in this sport for over 30 years. You've been hearing it almost every decade. We're going to fix the sport of boxing. Right. We're going to fix it. Yeah. It doesn't need fixing. Yeah. Al Haymon, please understand this, that there's been so many guys who have came into the sport of boxing who was going to transform the sport. The boxing game was going to be dead after Mike Tyson. It would never survive after the Leonard and Hagler.
That goes back to Jack Dempsey.
Jack Dempsey.
It really does.
It goes back a long way. Yeah. Point is, hey, look, guys, boxing's fine. Boxing is exactly what it is. It's ring card girls. It's these characters who come from urban communities and they get in and
ethnic appeal.
Ethnic appeal. Yeah. It is what it is. And it's not a television show. It's not a reality show. Right. I told you, Steve, look, The Contender was as close to a boxing reality show as we could get, and it fizzled. It's interesting to see where this is going to go.
PBC on NBC kind of reminded me of The Contender.
Yeah.
And having everybody walk in, yeah, right. And having, well, I kind of wished that Broner Molina could have been condensed to about 5 rounds, and they edited all the highlights together the way they did with The Contender. But having, you know, everybody walk into the same music, that reminded me of KO Nation.
Yeah.
Having it doesn't work to fit boxing and all boxers into any sort of uniform mold, whether it's hip hop or a Hans Zimmer
it's a
composition.
Cookie cutter, and we've been
cookie cutters don't work.
And we've been to great fights where Manny Pacquiao faces a really good Mexican like a Morales or Marquez, and it's not part of the fight. But what adds to the appeal and the mystique, number one, the entrances. It's very gladiatorial, and we love that. And our heart races, even now after all these years. And I think one of the great moments is when the Mexican national anthem is belted out, and you have 18,000 Mexicans singing along.
I even sing it. I'm not Mexican, but I
right.
Really?
You learned it by now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
4.2 million peak viewers, 3.4 average. What do you make of those ratings? I'm not a TV guy. Now, compared to other boxing broadcasts in a much smaller universe, they blow them away. But what does it say about the future? Because as of now, Corona was the only national ad. I'm very interested to see who else jumps aboard for April 11th at the Barclays Center. I think that's going to be one of the key factors in terms of the sustainability of the PBC.
They're going to have to build on this number. And as good as it sounds, we're talking about an era where HBO and Showtime proudly send out press releases when they do 1.3 million.
Yeah.
If they do anything these days, anything over 1 million viewers for a boxing broadcast, people beat their chest about that, you know. But you're talking about a subscription cable universe. Now we're talking about free terrestrial television. I think you were saying before the show, if a sitcom had those kind of numbers, it would be canceled.
Second episode, they'd be canceled.
And here's where we're really not accurately assessing what Al Haymon is doing. This is not like old television. If you don't have cable television nowadays,
you don't have television.
You don't really have television. So essentially, free television, free commercial television is a part of a television, is a cable television package. Those numbers, I think, are outstanding. I think if you would have asked them before this first one, if you got 4, how would you feel about getting 4 million? They would have been jumping up and down. Now I think what you're going to have is some real traditional advertisers look at those numbers and say, okay, I'll take that, because the difference between now and 30 years ago is that we have so many more options in terms of what it is that we can see on cable television. So that makes the 4 million even more impressive, in my opinion.
Before we wrap it up, question, Ken Miller, are you sending Fred Hawthorne out to the Barclays Center? He may have already booked his flight based on what you're telling me.
Fred
Jeez.
might be riding a bicycle out there. He loves you, Al. Love you, baby.
All right, well, that's it for this segment of 10 Count. If you want to check us out on Twitter, you could do so at UCN Live. On behalf of Ken Miller and Doug Fischer, this is Steve Kim saying till the next round, goodbye, everybody.